Hello my beautiful friends, welcome to Soil Sazón. I'm Josephina and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make refried beans. I have done a refried bean video before, but I had it combined with some Mexican red rice as well as a meat in a sauce, and I decided that I wanted to do it separately because it gets a little bit complicated trying to fast forward to just one portion of the video so that you can get the recipe for that. And so just to make it easier, I decided to make a separate video where it's all by itself. I also have a chorizo refried bean video. I'll link that down in the description box if you want to check that out. But let's go ahead and move on to making these refried beans. So I started this recipe by cooking some dry beans. I busted out my Instapot. I added 8 cups of water, 2 cups of pinto beans that were rinsed and cleaned off. Then I added in 1/4 of an onion with the booty still attached so that it's easier to fish out later. I also put in 2 cloves of garlic, 1 bay leaf, and some salt to taste, but I'm gonna go with it was probably like 1.5 tablespoons. That'll be up to you how much salt you wanna add in there, but it's better to go lighter when you're doing this portion of it so that later on, if you need more salt, once the refried beans are done, you can add it in at that point.
Voice over me here. I set it on the bean chili setting for 30 minutes and then let it release pressure all the way on its own.
So they are all finished. Let me show you guys. So they're nicely seasoned through the things that I added into the broth. If you wanted to eat them just like this, you can, but we gonna turn it to refried beans. I'm gonna turn this pot on to medium heat. While this pan is preheating, I'm gonna add in 4 strips of bacon, and I wanna add it to the pan while it's cold because when you put bacon in cold, it allows it to render out the fat a lot better versus if you put it into a straight hot pan, it's immediately gonna seize up and it won't let out as much of the fat that it's got in it. And the fat is what we want. So traditionally it's lard that's used to make refried beans in. I don't have any lard. If you do, great, you can use that. But if you don't, bacon is a great substitute. If you want to stay away from things like lard or bacon, you can 100% use avocado oil. That is what I used, I believe, in that first video. I can't remember exactly, but I have used that plenty of times. You could also, if you've got like bacon grease that you save in a jar anytime you cook bacon, you can just scoop out a good bit of that and put it in there. It'd probably save about 1/4 cup. So we're gonna move this around and get that to render out the fat. In the meantime that it's working, I'm gonna prep up the flavorings that I want for the beans. So to it, I'm gonna just give a rough chop to the other 1/4 of the onion. I'm going to only smash the 2 cloves of garlic, and then I'm going to cut this in half. Okay, you can see that it's starting to let out some of that grease. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my sliced serrano. If you don't want it spicy, you can leave these out, but this leaves just like a mild kind of spice. It's nothing strong. If you want to go a little bit more mild, you can remove the seeds from it, or you could even downgrade your spice to a jalapeno, or again, just leave it out. And I like to put those face side down first so that that whole underside gets nice and seared and that charry flavor is so yummy. The 2 smashed garlic cloves. I'm gonna give that a little mix. I don't like to add the onion in right away because with it being rough chopped, it'll cook a lot faster. If you hear that crying, that's my weenie dog over there crying because my kids went outside to play and he is desperate to be with them. Also, if you hear like jingling or other dog whining, it's my other dog Bowser, who also has a whole lot of FOMO about the kids being outside. So, and cue Bowser. Let me show you guys my dog. Sink full of dishes. This is Bowser. He's my beefy baby. My beefy baby. He is. Weenie weenie. Let me show you guys. He's been in other videos. This is Otter, the weenie dog. Alright. So you can see the yummy char happening on this side. Let me get you closer. Oh, let me bring it closer. That yummy char is just adding flavor to everything. So that bacon is about halfway cooked. Now is when I want to put in this diced up onion. There are so many different ways that you can do refried beans. The flavorings that you put in your oil are completely up to you. The most basic ones that you will always need though are the onion and the garlic. Anything else that you add into it is extra, and it's just to give that bean just another little in there. There is also the option of adding in the flavorings and then pulling them out, in which case you would probably just kind of want to leave your onion whole. That quarter I would have just thrown in, and then you can just fish it all out so that you only have the beans with that flavored oil. A lot of people do that. I grew up seeing that and eating it that way too. This is just another way to do that. Now we're at a point where the bacon is fully cooked. The onion is getting translucent and getting those crispy edges. You guys can see the skin on the serrano is getting all charred up and bubbly. This is the point where we're gonna add the last two ingredients. Normally I would have added in a tortilla at the same time that I did the onion, but I am out of already made tortillas. So here's a little tip. If you don't have tortillas and you do want that flavor, because let me tell you, it makes a huge difference. You'll take some masa harina if you have that available. If not, if you don't have a tortilla, you don't have masa harina, it's not a big deal. It'll still taste good. This just gives it another little yumminess that people are like, what is that? Is this? So I'm gonna add in about a tablespoon to make up for the tortilla that I don't have in here. It's gonna start changing color because it's cooking. Now we're gonna add the beans. So I've got my beans. If you don't have an Instant Pot, you can definitely cook this in a pot. All the ingredients will be exactly the same. The only thing is you'll be cooking it for a whole lot longer. So if you don't want to have to wait to cook the beans for hours and hours, and you don't have an Instant Pot that'll do it for you in about 30 minutes, then buy some canned beans. It's okay, it's not gonna be the end of the world. And if somebody's gonna judge you, they're not eating your food. Quarter of an onion, still intact, that I can easily scoop out. You can put this in the beans, but it kind of alters the flavor a little bit, and I'm just not a fan. Once you've got all the beans in there, you'll pour some of the broth in. Give that a mix. Guys, warning, when you are roasting up any kind of spicy pepper, it's gonna get to you. And I'm not gonna turn on my vent because then it's really loud, so excuse the coughing and the voice. Anyways, the amount of broth that you add to your beans is gonna be fully dependent on how you like your beans. If you want them to be runny, then you'll add more broth. If you want them to be like really thick and like a paste, then you'll add significantly less. I like to add just enough to cover the beans. You can still see the beans. Let me see if I can get close enough without all the steam. You can still see the beans poking out through it. So I'm gonna let that simmer so that all the flavors meld together. I let that simmer for about 3 minutes, and then I cut off the heat so that the bubbles can go down, because I'm gonna be using an immersion blender. And if you try to put an immersion blender straight into hot stuff like this that's shallow, you run a huge risk of that coming right back at you and burning you. So let it calm down before you do anything. You also have the option, if you don't have an immersion blender, which if you don't, you should. Those things are amazing. I'll put a link down in the description box for the one that I use. But you can use a potato masher. I call it a bean masher because that's what I grew up with this being used for. You can use one of these, but if you're going to use that, just make sure that all of your vegetables have gotten nice and soft, like your peppers and your garlic. That way it makes it easier to mash and include in everything, because if it's not, then you're gonna have really big chunks of things that you're gonna not like very much. Now that it is all nice and blended, this is when you want to check to see if you possibly need more salt. Mine was perfect for our taste, and this is what that looks like now. I like to leave some chunks in it. You can completely mash this all up so that there are no chunks left behind, but I love the texture of that. This is the consistency that I prefer for mine. So yummy. And again, if you don't like it that way, let's say you did yours like this and you're not a fan of it, then turn it down to low. Let that simmer, stirring occasionally so that it's not sticking to the bottom, and it's gonna thicken up beautifully for you. Also, once this cools down completely, it will 100% thicken up. And at that point, if you're having the leftovers and it's thick, if you saved, oh my God, that pepper is killing me, guys. I would open windows because that's what you would normally do in a situation like this and turn on a vent. But I'm recording a video with loud kids outside. I will survive. Anyways, if you go to eat leftovers and it's really thick and you don't want it that way, you can add in some stock, you can add in some water. If you saved some of that broth from the beans, you can add in that. Only thing is, if you're adding something that's unsalted, just make sure you check the flavor after you've thinned it out with that water or the stock, whatever it is that you're using. My parents have even used milk. Like, that's my dad's go-to, is to add milk into it. Just make sure you check the seasoning again after you add things to it. And for those who have followed along with me for a while, you know what time it is. We're gonna taste it. See, it's already thickening up now that it's cooling down. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Instead of being runny, you get the bloop bloops. I feel like I say this about a lot of food, but beans are such a comfort food. I love them so much. I would be perfectly happy to survive off beans, salsa, and some really good homemade tortillas. And I'd be set for the rest of my life. The serrano in there, depending on your tolerance level, for me is literally just like of spice. It's not anything that's like, oh my God, I need water, I'm so spiced out. It's perfect. It's so good. Beans like this will change your mind about how you feel about refried beans, especially if you're used to buying them already made in a can, or if you're used to eating them, say at a restaurant where it's usually out of a can, or someone who doesn't know how to make refried beans and just assumes that you're putting beans in a pot and mashing them, because I see people do that all the time and it hurts my heart. Not because I feel offended, but just because I know what those beans could be, and I know how much more delicious they could be if they knew how to make them correctly. This is what you're missing out on. All those flavors in there, you can't taste one separately. You have no idea what's going on in there. You just know there's something warm and delicious and so good. That sets it aside from just a regular old mashed bean. And that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think if you try it down in the comments. And for all of the ingredients that I've used, I'll have them listed down in the description box, along with the link for my chorizo refried beans if you want to give those a try. Thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't already, I hope that you're willing to hit that subscribe button. Stick around with me for a while on my journey to becoming a homesteader and teaching you how to make Mexican food from scratch. I'll see you in the next one.